Uh-oh. Let's see.
Hi, Brad.
Hey, how's it going, my man? Good to see
Everything's
you.
going good. Thank you.
Enjoying Spain?
Yeah, it's nice. I like it. It's good.
A little bit better weather, I assume.
Yeah, it is. It is nice. That's a big. The sunshine is a big plus, man. It does make you just happier.
Oh yeah. I noticed that when I moved from up north to down to Florida like 15 years ago, man. It was like I moved in the summer and I was just like, even during the summer, I could tell like summer up north versus summer down south is like just different. Even just sitting outside, going about your day, it's like you just get so much more sun on your skin and feel good. And it adds, I slept better. That was the crazy thing for me is like I noticed I slept better at night. Having more of
Mm.
the sunshine during the day like would help me like wind down at the end of the day and feel
Hmm.
a little more relaxed, better mood. So yeah, good
Yes,
stuff, man.
it's been good. The lifestyle here is well, people are just a bit different, you know. I mean, I'm not integrating into the culture yet. I'm like my language skills are pretty rudimentary. I'm like, sort of 2-year-old level of language skill, probably one and a half.
Give yourself some credit. We'll average it up to two, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that's good. But what's good about being an outsider is, of course, that you don't have to hear all the nonsense that people are yapping about all day long. And
Right.
you don't understand the local politics and all the other crap that people, all the other petty crap that people bicker over. That's the great part. The bad part is I just think you are kind of obligated to make some effort in integration if you go live in a new place. You know,
I think that goes with anything, right? Like, I mean, it's probably easier for you being in Europe. Like, there's way more cultural integration in Europe, I think, at least in the cities, than there is here because, we won't get into politics or anything, but like immigration here is such a hot subject. We've got some guys doing some work on our house, and the guy who's here now working, he immigrated from Cuba at 30, and he's like 44 now. And I was like, wow, so you saw it like as an adult, like the craziness that goes down there. And he's like, yeah, I did. And I mean, I knew about it like from reading and stuff, but that was a big thing like all the way back into the 1960s. And here we are, 2024, still basically dealing with more or less the same nonsense. And
hmm
at least in that, in Florida, it's a big deal because, we're, I think at Key West, it's like 50 miles from Key West to Cuba. It's very close. So, not so much here in Orlando, but like you go to South Florida, there's like way more people that have come over at different points and you just hear crazy stories. But I do think integration is important because it's like, it's like why move if you're not going to enjoy like the differences of like living in one place versus another, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, and
I think that's
just be a good guest, be a good guest. It's generally a rule.
yeah. 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 I wish more Americans do that when they traveled. Even like please and thank you and some basic courtesies go a long way. It's like I guess the standard is so low, for Americans learning another language that that people are like happy that you say please and thank you in their language. And I'm like that's cool and nice, but you know.
Yeah, there's that, I guess. But it's also Americans have a different way of being. Like, I mean, it's funny. I was at my gym and I had to just get on a quick client call. And then
Mhm.
I was on Zoom talking with my client in the US. And then I hear, "Hey, are you an American?" It's like, what? I looked around and there's a couple there, like in their 30s, about maybe like 10 foot away from me. But the funny part
Right.
is it wasn't the guy shouting at me, it was the woman. She was kind of barking at me, like, "Hey, are you an American?" I was like, "No, no, but I'm talking to an American right here on my phone call that I'm having." And she's like,
Oh
"Oh,
God.
okay, where are you from?" I was like, I'm
Was she a
Irish.
local? Was she
No,
local?
she was American. So two American
Oh,
tourists.
I gotcha. See, I'll tell you though. I will tell you though, and this is the thing I learned when I went over to the UK back in 2015. I had aside from the fact that we only have like the paper pound notes, which was a fun. I'll tell you that's a funny story. It's a good connection because you realize like when you travel, people are way more forgiving if you're nice and like willing to laugh at yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But But I will tell you, like when I went over there, everyone's like, you're gonna see a lot of Irish people because I was flying into Manchester and Liverpool, right? And I guess
Hmm.
there's a lot of Irish people, and
Yes,
there
there
was
is.
subsequently. But what was crazy is everyone's like, oh, like the Irish people, you'll have trouble understanding them, because they have different accent, and I'm like, okay, like I've heard that, and I'm like, I've met a lot of people from Ireland and the UK, and never had trouble understanding anyone, like even like Scouse or something like that, some of the difficult English accents. But what was crazy? The people that were the most difficult were like this. I don't know if it's like everyone in Manchester, but like I flew in and I took the train and I was remembering buying a ticket and this woman, I felt so like she must have thought I was an idiot or something because she had said to me so many things like and it's already through a plexiglass, right? So I can barely hear her to begin with because it's plexiglass at the counter. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the hardest thing I've ever had because there's so many things. And like I'm pulling out my paper money and she's looking at me, giving me the scowl because I don't have the coins or whatever. Which, that was the funny thing. Like we don't have that. That's one of the things we don't have here is like pay toilets. So like, I got off the
Oh yeah.
airplane and get out, got my suitcase, go through customs. And before I get on the train, I'm like, well, a lot of trains here don't have very clean bathrooms. They're like worse than airplanes. So I was like, let me just use the bathroom before I get on this train. And you have to put the coins in. And like I didn't realize like I don't even know what it was, 50 cents or pence or whatever, but it was hilarious because man, like I've got this big ass suitcase and I'm trying to go through like a pay like one of those like turnstile things.
Yes.
And these like four girls, so I'm like maybe what right around 30 at this point. So there's like some college age girls and they're like, You're American, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, I just got off the red eye. And I like blushing like crazy. I look like an absolute moron hauling this giant suitcase over. And so like, they put like whatever coin it was and I had to like hoist my bag over the turnstile because it wouldn't fit. I mean, it was ridiculous. But nobody had told because like when you go to the bank to exchange money here, they just have the paper. They don't have any of the coins, and that's way more common. Like our coins are small. We don't have dollar coins here. But um, but yeah, like I love those stories, because like what you realize is if you just are like cool with people, like I mean, even as an American, like with the bad reputation in some places, like people will work with you. Like if you're nice and you can laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously, like it's like okay, like whatever, you know. But I don't know, man. You're lucky though, because like being in the EU, like you guys can travel like way easier and like live. I just read about that like a couple years ago that you can move almost like we
Yeah,
move in states. You guys can move countries, which I think is awesome. That's really cool.
it is. It is
Um,
nice. We can live here when we don't need a visa to come here, and then you
right.
can you can just show up, and then you do have to get like a local social security number. They have
Okay.
it's not quite the same thing, but they have a special number system for yeah for foreigners living in the country. But you're legally entitled to work and live in any European country, and it is when you experience it, it's a really great privilege to be able to just show up in a country and live when it's for a lot of people they've got hella big number of hoops to jump through. Even people from the US here. We met some people from the US a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
They're running an expats group in the local area, and yeah, they're here for their adult son who's a pro soccer player or trying to turn pro with one of the Spanish teams, and
Nice.
his mom is like flying home to the US every 3 months and then staying there for a while and then coming back just because like she can't get a residency visa, despite being US citizens who are at least affluent enough that they can afford to send their son to college overseas and to actually come over and live here
Right.
for a while. So
It's like
yeah.
90 days. You can do 90 days every 6 months is what I think it is like in the Shenzhen. I don't know if that's the correct way to say that, but like in that it's like we can go for 90 days and then we got to leave for 90 days and we can come back for 90 days, but it's like it's a 180-day rolling period
Hmm.
I but what's crazy is and I've felt this way, because obviously I'm in Orlando, so like tourism is a quarter or a third of the economy here. There's a lot of other things here too, but like when the world economy stinks, we feel it first before anybody else in America because like it's people stop coming, right? And the hotels empty out and whatever.
Hmm.
But like even like places, because what's funky is, some countries have like a friendly, where they can just get a visa pretty quickly. But even people who are from very large countries, like we have a lot of people from India here in America, or they're descended from people from India, and even them, like getting a visa can be really difficult and expensive. Um, and even if they're well off, like I had friends in college, and big chunk of my crew were Indian kids, and like their parents owned like hotel chains, like they were really wealthy relatives because that's obviously, affording tuition in America, they pay the full price. So like they were coming from the top like 2-3% of income earners in India, and they were like, yeah, it took like a year to get through all the paperwork and take the English tests and get the background checks and the this and this. And these are like 18-year-old kids, like what trouble are they ever gotten into to warrant the third degree? Um, but I just always kind of crazy. Like my dad had a lot of graduate students as a professor, and like almost all of them were like 95% of them were foreign people, a couple people from Spain, a couple people from Korea, a couple Chinese people before all the politics got stupid. Um, yeah, it's wild like what they go through. And then they have to go right back once they graduate. They can't stay here, even though they're, good enough to come here for college, but not good enough to live. Makes no sense to me. But whatever. It's above my pay grade, as they say.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you
Uh,
doing these days, Brad? What's going on with business stuff?
Yeah, man, it's been good. So, just ended a couple of engagements,
Are you
with some
agency?
real yeah, kind of. So, but I'm more of like a one man band. So like I kind of work like as a fractional CMO slash, chief revenue officer, depending on how much marketing I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that's kind of what I've done for God, more or less off and on for 16 years. I've done, JV brokering, I've done all the copy in the world. I mean, I've done a whole slew of different things. Basically, I just like figuring out how to sell stuff and then selling it and putting, systems. And as I got, as the years have gone by, I'm more getting into, campaign thinking. Like I think in campaigns because like that helps me use AI more, as like a supplement. So yeah, that's what I really do is go into a company and, one of the things I have that I've done for years is, I go in and audit and I like asking questions. I'm usually very, as one of my colleagues said to me on Friday, he said, "You're urgently curious." And I'm like, yes, I'm urgently curious. I want to know how everything works. How does this work? Why do you do things that way? Not from a judgmental sort of view, but just I want to know how it works. Everything. I've been that way since I was a kid. So, I
Mm-hmm.
come in and I ask like 5 or 6 questions, and usually that finds a lot of opportunity. And then it's just a matter of what do we prioritize to go capture. So that's typically what I do. I don't do paid ads. It's basically the only part of marketing I really don't do is paid ads and more of like the technical SEO stuff. I haven't really messed with that in 10 plus years. So I wouldn't say I know how to do it anymore anyway. But
Okay.
yeah, man, that's what I do. So email lists, I love managing email lists. I love email. That's my favorite thing, honestly, is because it's like you can do anything with email campaigns, one-to-one, like transactional emails, like in a CRM. Everything can be done with email, and I think that's really cool. To use technology to communicate like make it feel like one-on-one, but using the technology. And I've been obsessed with that since I first got an autoresponder back in 2008, man. I just thought that was the neatest thing that I could send a bunch of emails like I would in Outlook or, any of those programs, but do it through a system that could send it to 10,000 people. That was just I remember the first time I did that, I had done a solo ad and I had like 300 email subscribers. I think this was back in the summer of 2008. And I remember when I first made money, I think I made 4 sales that day on some info product or whatever. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like holy, I sent an email that I wrote in like, and back then Aweber and stuff was very not as user friendly as it is now, right? So it was like working in a Word doc and there's no glamour to it. I didn't even know what an HTML email versus plain text. I didn't know anything about copy. I just wrote it like a letter, like you were writing an email, like dear whoever, like I was very, very basic back then, but I sold 4, man, made like $120. And, as a freshly minted college grad, I thought that was the neatest thing. And it's just
Of
been,
course.
I've been obsessed with it ever since, man. I mean, I don't know. It's cool. Now there's all kinds of stuff you can do that wasn't even possible back then. I mean, it was
Hmm.
all linear broadcasts or like linear send emails in a row. There was no if then that stuff. I'm kind of a geek. If you looked at my desk, there's like notepads and I draw out like campaigns and boxes and flowcharts on my notepad. That's come up with things, find new campaigns in Google Images.
What
And
kind of
it's
what kind of areas do you like to work in? Or do you do kind of mostly internet marketing stuff, or are you working in
no, I
other
mean,
areas too?
I've worked a little bit in the health space. I did a project to kind of help somebody out, but I've never really worked in that space. But I like working in I've worked in financial services. I've worked in, the internet marketing business stuff. Not like the hypey launch side of things, but more just people selling things through the internet. Then a lot of personal development stuff. I worked with Brian Tracy's group for a long time. That was one of the
Oh, awesome.
biggest, opportunities I ever had. And that was a fun story because the first time management book I read was his, Eat That Frog book. And then 15 years later, here I am running his email list. It's just a fun full circle moment. Um, but yeah, like all that sort of stuff, webinars to like info products, a lot of appointment setting. So businesses that set, appointments and running campaigns to get people to like book a call, coaching in multiple markets, coaching markets and things like that. So it's really like I always tell people when they say like what markets do you like to work in? And it's very simple. Like I like chances where direct response marketing is appreciated. I'm not one of these like brand guys that's going to write you like a Coca-Cola ad and like video scripts and stuff like that. I've done it, but like there's a lot of people that are better than me at that. Like I like stuff where it's like I can send something, I can look at data, make decisions, get people to buy something, they get a result that's like demonstrable. I like the old finger pointing test where you can like point to a result. Like I did this, I followed the instructions. I accomplished this outcome that I bought and I'm happy. You know, anything where that dynamic is in place and it's not one of these like kind of shifty, dodgy things. I don't do shifty, dodgy anything. So I've never done a lot of supplements I wouldn't work with. I haven't worked in like gambling or adult or any of those types of more edgier things. Nothing against it, just not my personal enjoyment. I like to work in stuff where, because you have to study the products, right? I mean, this is the thing I think a lot of copywriters don't really do. And it's hard because it takes a lot of time and energy, but you got to get in there as a consumer. So, like with me, the thing that's always helped me in that regard is like when I'm curious about something, I want to learn how to sell it. And so then it's like if I'm curious about the topic, whether it's investing, that was my original goal when I was fifth grade, to be in the investment world, real estate, any of those things where it's very like interesting to read about. And then like because I'm interested in reading about it, it's easy to write about. And I don't have to be like, some clever slick writer. I can just kind of be like a reporter. That's kind of how I really imagine myself. I don't see myself as copywriter. I see it as like I'm reporting information and referring you to a resource that might be of value to you. That's kind of how I think because I'm having been a business owner, I like to sell stuff. So marketing is a means to generate sales. I'm not in
Hmm.
marketing just to like stroke my ego with some clever turn of phrase or any of that stuff. I'm just not really wired that way. Nothing against that stuff. It's just that's not for me. So yeah.
Okay.
It's
Um,
a lot, man. It's a lot, dude. It's a lot. I've seen a lot of things in this last, it's evolved a lot in the last however decade and a half, you know. Seen a lot of things come and a lot of things go, but that whole like direct response, I'll give you an example. TikTok and like that
mhm.
short form, Instagram reels, all that sort of stuff. you know, I had thought I didn't think anything like TikTok would ever come like short form video like that short. But I remember, when because you got to think when I started YouTube, it was just getting going, right? So video was nothing back in '08. It was all like desktop sales pages, nothing on the phone. It was all just computers. And I said, if somebody can figure out how to bridge the marketing that um, television does and put it like more direct response principles involved, whoever figures that out is going to just kill it because commercials are terrible. There's no call to actions. I mean, YouTube is really great. Like you can learn a lot about marketing just watching YouTube ads. They're some of the best marketing education ever. I don't subscribe to the YouTube Premium for that reason. I want to see the ads just to see
Yes.
how they do the calls to action. Like they're doing more QR codes here now and send it to your phone so you can actually buy the product. There's all these really innovative stuff that I see in like Hulu, and that's a market that I want to like explore in the next 5 years is, the advertisements on Netflix and Amazon and stuff like that. Because it's short. You don't have a lot of time to jibber jabber. You got to just get to it. Oh, anyways.
Yes, YouTube is I agree. I don't want the premium. I do want to see the ads. I want to see which ads I actually want to watch. And
Right.
then um at that point it's like, okay, why did I want to watch that? Why did
Right.
why did the first thing out of that person's mouth make me watch for more than 3 seconds and not just default to like get this crap off my screen?
Right. Well, I mean, as marketers, I always kind of chuckle when I see people complaining about ads as marketers, and I'm like, it's kind of like a cook getting mad at someone giving you samples of their cooking. It's like you're a chef, you're a cook. You should want to try different cuisines and different, people who have different cooking skills than you do. Like it should be an obsession. So like in our space, watching ads, even if you're not in the market for that product, I think that's actually better because sometimes like I learn a lot from ads where like, one of the better markets to learn from is weight loss and like fitness because it's such a competitive market. It attract like you have to be good to sell stuff there, right?
You have to be better than good. It's not even that
Yeah,
it's a competitive market. It's like one of the oldest markets. It's one that
right.
pretty much every person alive, and especially now, sort of has need of their services. Like,
Right. Well, and you see the ads, like, I mean, like I'll be honest with you, and it's easier with AI now, but like, I have an AI thing called Max AI, and one of the things it does is it puts a little button on YouTube videos and it'll make a transcript. So when you click on YouTube, if you click the ads, you can oftentimes hover over it. And I don't know how it works on the phone. I just do this on desktop because that's all I know how to do it. But you can click the link of the ad and like it's a title, and it'll pull
mhm.
it up in a new tab. So you have the ad, just the ad
Oh,
video
nice.
in like a YouTube video. So it looks like you're watching a YouTube video, but it's just the ad that was the pre-roll ad. So then with this Max AI, you can go in and transcribe it verbatim, and it's pretty accurate. You used to have to pay like $1 a minute for this, and now it's all free with ChatGPT. But all of a sudden, then you sit there and you look at the transcript of the ad, and you're like, why did this work? So like, for free, you can sit there and like there's other tools. I use a thing called Max AI because it plugs into all the different AI model tools or whatever they call them. But yeah, like you have that button there and all of a sudden now you can transcribe it. So like why did this video go viral? Because every viral video is really direct response. I mean, that's the secret nobody tells you is like they write the scripts to hook people in just like you would an ad. So I mean, this is just the obsession of being curious because, the longer I'm in this game, the longer I realize I don't know much of anything. I'm good at my little tiny part of this, and there's just so much to learn. And, like my birthday's coming up and I'm turning 39, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just starting, because it's just a constant learning evolution. And, you know, once you get past all the like I mean it's different when you've gone your come up and you're trying to make it and still have a job or you still have something like another career and you're transitioning into this world. But once you've been in this long enough and you've made some money and you're good and you're not struggling, I think if you don't love it, this is a really hard like living to make. I think if you don't really enjoy like the process, you know
Not
that's just me.
physically
I
hard. I talked to a
mentally,
guy,
yeah,
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 mentally,
not physically hard,
psychologically,
yeah,
because you you
yeah,
you feel you feel like dog shit a lot of the time. Like something doesn't
yeah,
work, and you feel like so bad about it, and then something has to go good again before you start to feel good again. And you can
right.
be, I'm not so far in as you. I've been doing this like I quit, and I was doing some sales and marketing stuff in my construction job beforehand.
Hmm.
But like when I decided, okay, I'm just going to ditch the actual construction industry and just go into marketing, that was like
Right.
6 years ago. And it takes a long time to internalize, to get past tactics and internalize the idea that there are principles, and then to start
Right.
to be able to, where, like to get that unconscious competence stage where you're watching something and you're like, oh, he said that because he's trying to do this,
Right.
you know, that takes a good long time. And then the next stage beyond that is actually the unconscious competence to use that, where you're writing stuff and you're
Right.
writing it, you're implementing direct response principles about things like proof and objection handling and all that, and you're
Right.
doing it unconsciously without having to think about it, and then you see it, you go back and look at what you wrote, like, oh, that's why I did all of this. It takes a long, long time. Like, the swipes
Totally.
and the frameworks and the templates, those are your training wheels. I feel like I'm just starting to get out past that stage now.
Right.
But even then, it's like it doesn't work a lot of the time. You have to go back and do it again and again and again. It's psychologically crushing a lot of the time to be like, I've been doing this six damn
Yeah.
years, and sometimes I still feel like a beginner. Like,
Well, you will, and I'll tell you, like, if you feel like a beginner, I think like having that beginner's perspective is important. And like, one of the things that I've done in the last year, because I can tell you, like, when you run an email list that's hundreds of thousands of people, right?
mm-hmm,
I mean, think about like if you screwed something up and it went to 500,000 people, right? Psychologically, like that puts discipline in you in a way that nothing else will. Um, and we all make mistakes, but one of the things that I've been doing is like I've been going back and like I'll give an example. I've been going back to basics, and here's one of the things I did it because I like playing with AI. Like I have a goal to do something with AI every single day, and I don't always hit it, but I try to hit it 4 or 5 days a week. Sometimes I miss on the weekends or during the week if I have a lot of calls. But here's what's cool. I took I took a letter, okay, and I build templates for everything. And when I say templates, I mean like section by section. I think in modules. So like one of my
mm-hmm,
weird curiosities, and you'll appreciate this coming from the construction industry, is I love modular housing. Okay. And just the ability to put Lego blocks together and assemble something that looks like a stick-built home, but is actually just modules that you've been botched together or popped together. And so I think of copy very similarly. Like good copy, when you look at some of the AIDA and all the basic frameworks that are out there. But here's what's cool. And this is where AI is an augmentation tool, not a replacement tool. And I
mm-hmm.
say this to all the copywriters because this has been an argument for a long time. Copywriters are like, oh yeah, I can't do me and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it's not supposed to. Just like a hammer doesn't build a house, but a skilled person with a hammer can go a lot further than someone trying to smack nails in with their hands. That's not going to happen, right? It's a dramatic example, but it works. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll write something and I'll notice patterns. And I think in patterns and flows, like that's how I think about everything. Um, so I use AI and I say, hey, AI, I need you to act like a copywriting strategist. And I need you to turn this framework into like a fill in the blank type of template for me. Okay. And then what I will do is I'll take that and I'll make like essentially like an assemblage of modules. You can do this with any sales letter by just copying all the text and dropping it into ChatGPT because it's got enough tokens now. And you can sit there and say, like, give me the structure. Why does this work? What's the copywriting strategy behind this? And then once it'll tell you, you're like, okay, I know you understand. Now make me a template of this so that I can go in and reuse this out every time. And then all of a sudden, all it does is it gets you to draft one in a quarter of the time. Right. So, if this is a little harder if you're a freelance person and one day you're working on this thing and one day you're working on something different and this and the other thing. But when you get to a point where you're working in a market and you start developing that niche market awareness of like what are the pain points that everybody in this market has, in this avatar and da 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 da. All of a sudden, you can write things in modules and then go in and fine tune it. So if you imagine yourself like a sculptor, you start with a giant raw block of marble and you chisel big chunks out and then you get smaller and then you start seeing the little tiny thing where you're doing the nose and the nostrils and the eyeballs and all the really intricate stuff and then they polish it and then now you have Statue of David, right? But like that mentality is the way that I think of AI and copy because I think a lot of people get to this point where copy is this like art form, and I don't think it's an art form. I don't think copy, and I'll argue this, and that's okay. People can have their opinions, but I don't see copy as art. Like good copy sells stuff, right? It
Yes.
connects with the consumer and people swipe their credit card or they don't. One of the things like going back to '08, that always drove me nuts. And like my background's in finance. So I'm like, I think in numbers and forecasts and that sort of thing. But like, I remember one of the first copywriting trainings I read, and it was a PDF because there was no video back then. And the guy was like, well, if you can get a 1% conversion rate, you'll be able to buy all the ads you need and you'll make all this money. And the first thing I thought is I said, if I send 100 people to this page and only one of them buys, how is that good? Right? Like, what about the other 99? Like, why didn't they buy? Like, what are we doing to like capture that? And that's kind of what got me like from going more to like what I do to make a living. I'm always thinking like, because I see businesses all the time and they got leaks, and flows, and they're like, I sent 1,000 people to this page and only, 10 of them bought. I'm like, what did you do with the other 990? Did you get them on an email list? Did you give them some opt-in bribe? Did you give them a coupon? Did you whatever, are you retargeting them? And like all of a sudden, there's people out there, they'll whittle things down to get that little like 1.1% conversion improvement. And I'm like, I'm not smart enough nor clever enough to write 50 split test iterations, all that. And I'm like, look, like one of the questions I always ask, can we take a proven offer and sell it another way? Right? You'll see businesses and they'll be like, I only sell over the phone. And I'm like, well, what if, I'm selling now to international and I have to like be on calls at like 3 in the morning because it's 3 o'clock in the Philippines, like or whatever, the time zone differences. What if I just created a video and had a buy button or an appointment thing where they could just, get the basics of the offer and then purchase that way? Like if it's an addition onto something, doesn't mean the phone call thing has to stop. But what about all the people that don't want to spend an hour talking to a sales rep? There's a lot of consumers like that. And if that's your only
Mhm.
way to buy, you can come in and make a lot of money by just adding a kind of a direct your own do it yourself purchasing environment, or the other way around. Like you'll see businesses, they never want to talk to anybody ever. They'll have like swipe your credit card, and then you try to get customer support, and it's like a bullshit email that takes 3 days to get an answer. And I'm like, put a chat bot on the page, put a freaking customer service phone number on there, and just have it there, because that's what a legitimate business looks like. And if you're in a market, like for example, a lot of the markets I'm in, it's like 35 to 70 is the demo, right? So they're not buying off Instagram Reels and TikTok, this and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that stuff. That's the future. But like I sell in markets a lot of times where it's people with money who are established. They do want to talk to somebody on the phone if they want to, or they want the basic information that they can make a simple purchase. But these are all things that I see as a business owner that I think copywriters and service providers can really add a lot of value to their clients by just saying like, how do we make it easier for people to swipe their credit card? Because they want to buy. They're there on the page. Whatever you did to click, to get them an email, whether it's an ad or whatever, they click the ad, they're on your sales page. They're here for a reason, right? If they don't buy, if you're, and especially if you're spending money on ads, and I know you do a lot of paid advertising stuff, but if you can just get an extra 1 or 2 points, I have a story that I like to tell people. And I was flying to visit my dad one summer on summer vacation. And I luckily was on Southwest, which, for anyone who doesn't know, Southwest, they don't have assigned seats. You just kind of pick a seat in coach, and it's all coach seats. It's not, there's no first class or nothing. So I happened to sit next to this guy across an aisle who he had just retired. He was there on vacation with his wife, and he retired as the head of engine engineering for Ford Motor Company. Okay,
Oh, wow.
35 years, and his job was this all we make every engine. He's like, I started out as an engineer after college and moved his way up and retired. He sat on a napkin, a cocktail napkin that they give you on the flights, and drew out an internal combustion engine on like 5 or 6 napkins with a pen in his bag. He's like, this is the same engine, more or less, that Henry Ford invented with the internal combustion engine. And a few things have changed. But he's like, my job here is to figure out if I substitute aluminum for steel, I increase the fuel economy of this whole process by a third of a mile, let's say, which doesn't sound like a lot. But every year we're just constantly improving on this basic same model. But what he said, he's like, I want you to understand something, and you'll learn this math in high school, but like I was a kid, and so he's like, you'll learn this later when you get into statistics. But every improvement you make on the first part of a funnel, like in this case, a funnel, in his case, the engine, has subsequent benefits. So if you have a 3% improvement on a three-part process, it's not a, 3 times 3 times 3. It compounds. So when you think of like things like a business owner and you say, if I'm spending $1,000 a week to get this many consumers to this, book appointment call funnel or whatever it is, if I just get one little tiny little improvement on the front end, I benefit across the whole back of the board. And that could be the difference between a funnel converting or not. Just that one thing, when you get into average order value or whatever. So, I'm amazed, like, you do a lot with Facebook ads and stuff, but like, how many times I call businesses and never get a phone call back? And I clicked like one of those like ads where it's like book a phone call and it'll call through Google.
Hmm.
At least we have those here. Um, all the time. And I'm like, you spent $30 on this paid pay-per-click ad for me to book a call and you never return my phone call. It's like these little things in business. And like, I always like to tell people because I love copywriters. I really do. I love copy. What I always try to tell people, especially people who are foreign, who maybe English isn't their first language, because there's a lot of confidence issues there. I'm like, your job is to help increase sales. If you do that, nobody cares if your English is a little funky or you say a word wrong or you got a thick accent or anything. Nobody cares. Most people don't. Like, if you make green, like you're good. Um, and I always think like copywriters, people see people in like the Facebook groups and they're arguing about nonsense. And I'm like, did it make more money? That's it. And sometimes that's not necessarily split testing something like a whole sales letter. Sometimes it's changing a headline. Sometimes it's adding more ways to buy stuff. All this stuff matters. And if you think like a business owner, like you put yourself in your client's shoes because he's paying you to write copy that sells more than what he's got now, theoretically, you don't have to do a lot of sometimes. He's got a leak, oh, he doesn't have a follow-up sequence on his emails. That's free money. I can crank that out in a day. And it just spits out money indefinitely. All of a sudden now those ads are real cheap. Um, I don't know, man. It's fun, but like copywriters are so powerful because you literally can change the world with your pen or your keyboard. And I think a lot of copywriters don't understand it. They're just like, oh, I write sales letters, or I write emails or video scripts or whatever. It's like, no, dude, your stuff is gonna be seen by millions of people. So how cool is that? That's so awesome. You know. Anyways, I get excited. I could talk about this shit forever.
I have stopped calling myself a copywriter a couple of years ago, and I just started calling myself a consultant because I thought, well, the people who are really, really like at the very best at copy, they pretty much do nothing else. And like,
Hmm.
God bless them, and they're great. And I know I've met some of them, and but it's a very different thing to be that obsessed with that one area. And then those people, you don't often see or hear too much of them because they just they find usually an organization that they fit well into or a couple of long-term clients, and they just knuckle down and just work, 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 work. And then all the people who are
So hard.
talking about what like the guys that Ben Settle calls like Facebook copywriters or whatever, who are, and I was one of those people for a period of time who are talking about it all the time in different groups. They're, I think, more a lot of time just looking for an identity, or
Yeah.
and a way out of maybe dissatisfying a life that's dissatisfying in other areas. And while some of them turn out to be really good and do really good work, the thing of where they start to talk about copy as some kind of an art form, it does get kind of silly because, yeah, like you say,
It,
we're here to sell stuff, and as valuable as copywriting is when it comes to like marketing and sales, like copy is the tip of the marketing spear.
right.
But there's a whole hell of a lot of shit that needs to happen before and after
Yeah.
that
Boy.
to make something work. And so when they
Oh
get into
man.
the whole
Amen.
bragging about like my copy did X, Y, and Z, like again, you know, it's true. And like for those few people, I've met people who have written sales letters that have like done tens of millions in sales. And for those very few people, it is true. Like those people are massive like leverage points for the business. But for most copywriters, eh, like that's the dream, but it's not really what it's going to be like for most of your work. It's a lot of your work is just functional, just getting shit done, putting stuff on a page, and
Shipping. Yeah.
the
Ship.
just
Yeah.
shipping work,
Ship.
and the leverage points actually are elsewhere. It's like, you know, do they have the budget? Do they have the cash flow? Do they have like someone who actually knows how to run the traffic? Do they have people
Right.
who can actually make the list work? Who, do their emails? Are their emails not going to spam? Like real basic shit is where like these online businesses often survive
I will
or
tell
fail.
you, my God. And when you get into bigger companies, it's even worse, man. Like this is why, like humility is a powerful form of leverage in this game. Okay. And I will tell you, like, I have a lot of confidence and I like helping people because I know there's nobody exactly like me that has my unique set of experiences. Scott Adams wrote a great book. Something like how to lose at everything and still win or something like that. I can't remember, but
Hmm.
the key idea about it was if you are okay, he's like, I'm not a great like writer, I'm not a great drawer, I'm not a great this and this, but there's only a dozen or so people that have all of these skills in my unique package that is
Hmm.
me. Okay, and therefore, I was last week in one of the Facebook groups, I wrote a prompt that was like how to run your copy through and make sure it sounds like native English, right? If you're not a native English speaker, right? And I was amazed at, it took me 10 minutes and all these people tested it out and they're like, oh, this is great and all this stuff. And I said to one guy, I was like, you know, this gentleman was from Pakistan, and I understand that Pakistan is not a wealthy country, but it's still hundreds of millions of people. There's a lot of consumption there. It's billions of dollars economy. It's nothing to sneeze at if you're trying to make 5, 10, 15, $20,000 a month. Like
Hmm.
there's plenty of opportunity to get a scrape off of that big economy. And that country has a lot of really good English speakers. People don't know that, but there's a lot of English fluency there for whatever reason. I don't know if they started in school like the
The
Philippines or whatever,
British,
but
the British. It's
right,
always
right.
the British.
Well, and I will tell you though, like in my and I this is a very limited experience, but I have found it easier to communicate with like Pakistanis and Bangladeshis on either side of India than a lot of Indian people when it comes to functional English. Like when I write a Loom video or shoot a Loom video trying to explain what I want done, I always find it way less back and forth. The work always comes back right when I hire from those two countries, so I actually look forward to hiring those people because I got a couple guys to do like technical stuff and some things. And like the one guy told me, he's like, I make $500 a month in my day job and I work at night a couple hours. And I mean, we're talking like $40, $50 jobs. But he's like, I send that money back to my parents because they live in a village where, they don't even have electricity even, or running water. Like it goes in and out and, whatever. So he's like, that's where I grew up. And he lives in one of the big, cities where he doesn't have that problem. But I mean, I find that special because he does a good job. It's affordable on my end. He's happy. I'm happy. The work gets done accurate every time, like whatever. One of the things I told this person, going back to the story is like if you know copy, but you struggle with English, why do you have to be an English copywriter? What about being a copywriter in whatever your native tongue is? Because there are a lot like this is there's a very weird energy that like I noticed as a kid, and I grew up in an area where it was like all white people, right? It was very homogenous, not very many multicultural. It is now, but it wasn't when I was a kid. But I noticed I was like, there's a lot of money outside of the United States. Like America has got a big global impact, obviously, but there's a lot of very wealthy consumers in other countries that don't speak English as a primary language. And I've always wondered, I'm like, why are these people trying to all compete in the American or
Oh,
British markets
be,
when they could go
be,
sell in their space, and clean up? Anyways,
yeah, but there's a limited number of people who have, I guess, like vision and local connections, and maybe a lot of people feel disenfranchised from their home society.
maybe,
I
yeah.
actually I know a guy really nice guy, Shazad Khan, who's the probably by this stage now the biggest copywriting teacher in Pakistan. Really
Oh,
smart young
wow,
guy in
cool.
his 30s, and his whole hook that he made copywriting to some extent. He did the kind of copywriting biz op thing,
Okay.
but he was quite smart. He's like he initially went really broad and tried to like say, hey, you can make money doing this. And he said he got people who were like not even functionally literate, like coming to him expecting to teach me. He's like, he quickly realized that these people want to buy my stuff because they want the opportunity because it's biz up. but they don't have the basic capabilities with language
Right.
to be able to make a living. Um, and he's like, and then he's like, some people do make a living in the local market, but it's not a very good living. It's hard, you're just getting paid in local currency, and wages are very low as a result.
Right.
So they all want into the UK and US market in particular for a whole bunch of reasons. There's
Makes
the
sense.
there's the relative power of the US economy, even though it's not the biggest population. Like it's like working with people from the US is for me, even from Ireland, like there's 5 million people in Ireland. If something
Right.
like the landscaping businesses, okay, I got work with quite a few of those. The
Right.
the vision that a landscaping business owner can have in Ireland is very small. In the UK, it's bigger, but still limited. That's a 70 million person country and a wealthy country.
Right.
The vision someone like a landscaping business owner can have in the US is just exponentially larger because the market is so much bigger for services there.
Right.
There's
I could
guys
see
like that
that.
guy who's like Mike Andes. If you, I don't know if you've seen him, he's on YouTube. Really interesting guy. He's like started as a landscape gardener. He's now become a kind of guru in the landscape gardening space. But he's like
Wow.
spun off his original experience in landscape gardener into so many things, like selling courses.
Right.
He's built and sold a CRM specifically for landscaping businesses. He's involved in all kinds of tangential businesses like training, um, and actually then I think the buying and selling of businesses. So there's so many things he's branched out into that are like adjacent business spaces that would be that are only made possible by the scale of business in the US. And
That makes sense.
these are not big
That
corporates.
makes
These are
sense.
a lot of things that are small local business, but there's just so many consumers and so many consumers with a lot of disposable income. And that's why it's such a coveted market for people
Right.
from around the world. Coming back to my buddy Shazad, his thing, he quickly realized, okay, I can't sell to the whole general population. Who am I going to sell to? People who already know English at a good enough functional level that they can do business with people in the US. So now his thing is engineers, doctors, civil servants. That's who he pitches his pro. Oh, educated stay-at-home moms. There's a lot of women who like go to university and after graduation they get married and they become stay-at-home moms. So he's like, if
Right.
you're a stay-at-home mom who's also a college graduate, this is perfect for you. If you're an engineer who makes $1,000 a month and wants to make some extra cash out, perfect. If you're even doctors and lawyers, it's crazy, like because those guys are making decent money in the local economy, but
Right.
getting paid in local currency, and so they feel there's a very strong local ceiling on what they can make. And he's like, this is perfect for you. He sells it to these guys,
It's
and
amazing.
his key hook for
I
his
love
whole
it.
program that when we worked together, I helped him a little bit with. He'd already found it, but we turned it into kind of the hook for his program, and it's all about the exchange rate, and like that's his core hook. He's like, life is better when you earn in dollars and spend in rupees.
Right.
Like, and that's the hook.
Yeah.
Like and that's way before he ever talks to somebody about copywriting. That's just what he
Right.
leads with that every time. If you make $1 and you
Amazing.
spend it in rupees, your life gets a
Right.
shitload better.
It amazes me, and I mean, I love meeting people from all over the world. I mean, and don't get me wrong, like I absolutely love America. I feel like I got the lottery ticket of a lifetime just being born here and not having to deal
Hmm.
with all the citizenship bullshit that a lot of people have when they come here. Like, but a lot of my friends, like one of my best friends, like he came here at 5. His parents brought him here. He grew up here and then they got deported right before he had gotten a full ride scholarship to Princeton University, which is Ivy League. It's like up there with Harvard and all those type of schools. And they got sent back, and he came back. He won a visa, like a green card lottery, like 2 years later. It's a crazy story, but then you just realize how different like I'm in general, just to be very clear, I'm a very optimistic person, borderline naive optimist, but I'd rather be that than the other way around. And
Okay.
I love looking at people from the other world because like my brain is just wired to see opportunity in everything, which is actually when I get frustrated, like one of my, my self-confidence, to be vulnerable and this should just show you that I'm like a real person too, like everybody else. I get mad when people don't want to do the things that I see in their business. This has been, one of the biggest challenges of my career is saying like, What's your priority? What's your pressing pain? Because I see 50 things we could do to like increase your income. And then, I make, rev shares or something like that off of it. But if they don't want to do it or they don't see it, and then I'm like, oh, I want to do it, and it's not about the money, it's not about greed or just like consumption. Because I mean, like, we have a great life. I have a wife and a son. My cars are paid off. We have a nice house in a good school district. I don't want to move. Like, we are good. Like, and I'm not a big consumer. With like, I'm not really into like watches or the luxury goods thing or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not from us. But like, it's just there's so much opportunity out there all around. And like, like, I've got these 6 questions which I'll give you a link to so you can give to everybody. But it's like, I go into any business and I can see money. I can see gaps in the process of how they're, getting consumers. There's consumers that are wanting to buy, but they don't because of whatever reason. And like, having worked at Disney and worked in big organizations that are moving money, you just see little tiny tweaks that, $1,000 a day. That's 365,000 a year. If that's all margin, because you've already, it's in addition to. So most of that, even in an e-com operation where you've got cost of goods sold, a lot of that's margin because, you've already spent the ads, you've already got the warehouse, you've already got the workers to ship the goods and da 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 da. So you basically just got to pay the cost of goods sold of all those incremental sales. But like, this is where, as a person, I've struggled, I mean, almost every day, to be honest with you, with seeing opportunity and wanting to just be like, let me go to work. One of the big lessons that I've learned in the last year, because again, it's always going back to basics and finding, you fix the basics, the rest of the crap kind of falls into place, is being good at something doesn't necessarily mean you're good at selling it, right? This is a
Hmm.
big concept that I see a lot of people when they're new. They're soaking in everything and all this other stuff, and then they're like, I've been doing this for 5 years and I'm not, making the money I want to make. And it's like, yeah, because you're good at your skill, but that doesn't mean you're a good businessman. There's two separate things. You have the craft and then you have the businessman, and we're all businessmen. Whether anyone likes it, there is no such thing as a freelancer. There's no such thing as self-employed. There's no such thing as even an employee. This is a big mindset shift for people. Okay. We all have a boss. We all have clients. If you have a job, you have one client. If you have freelancers, you got maybe 3, 4, 5 or whatever. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got thousands of bosses because those are your customers. And if they don't buy, you have no business. So like, we can get away from all this bullshit, where people are like, I don't want to have a boss. When you're
When
self-employed,
people
it's
say that, it's
harder.
like, no, no, no,
No,
that's
it's
completely
worse.
wrong-headed thinking. Yeah.
It's wrong. And like, there is no like this is why I get so frustrated with like the biz op world. And it's not, it's functional lying. It's like, it's lying by omission. It's lying by not telling the full picture. Is like, you have to work, right? And even if you're building stuff, you've got to look at your data. You've still got to manage your employees. There is no such thing as passive income. Like, I've been doing investments since the 5th grade. I can assure you there's no such thing as passive income. Somebody is managing that money or building that thing or operating that business. Even if
Hmm.
it's not you, but you still, then you got to operate you got to manage the employees, right? So either way, you're doing some work. But like, I wish the big thing I would convey to people, and there's so many things, is like, just figure out how to sell stuff and enjoy the process. Because like, I mean, I know people that make stupid money and they are not very smart, but they know what people want to buy. I mean, just look at like the political stuff on social media. Like, there are people out there whose job it is to get everybody riled up and ticked off at the other guy, whatever that is. It's on both sides of the political spectrum, but that's all they think about. And they're basically copywriters. They're writing messages to elicit emotions, right? Now, I don't think they're contributing value to the world personally, but if you have that skill set and you are connecting people with products that solve their problem, like, I don't know, man. I'm like, people don't see how, like, we are so lucky to have this skill set to be able to convince and persuade and get people excited about whatever. And then you go work in, like, I've seen people go from like hardcore markets like health, wealth, and finance and fitness or relationships, I'm sorry. And then they go work in a market and it's like, wait, you don't have a call to action on your page? Like, I was talking to a client recently and they do webinars for demos. And this is B2B. This is, tens of millions of dollar company. They were running webinars for a long time where they didn't have a go here to book a demo link at the end of their presentations.
So what were people supposed to do?
That's the point. Figure it out. Like, hopefully they go to the website and then a book. But like this company, okay, bless them, they fixed it, but they still got to tens of millions of dollars a year in recurring revenue without a
Yes.
basic call to action. And this company has governments as clients, right? Like this is not just B2B. This is like business B2G, like business to government. Like you're talking onboarding hundreds of thousands of users because, during COVID, this business really blew up due to the nature of what it is. But the bigger you go in the business world, and this is something else I'd like to everyone to see, go where people are already spending money because it's easier to multiply big numbers with small little changes, like the old saying, small hinges swing big doors idea.
Mm-hmm.
Go to these bigger companies because they got people that are making 60, 70, $100,000 a year that don't know diddly squat, right? But they've worked the corporate ladder thing, and they're good at that. So they get paid a lot of money. And then some of us can come in and it's like, hey, what about if we did this? What about if we did this? And then all of a sudden they send it out and they're like, oh crap, like we sent one email out and we made $25,000. Oh, okay. Like if I showed you some of the campaigns that I've run and the basicness of them, because this is the other thing. And I'm going to credit Travis Sago with being the one to teach me this. I don't know if he came up with it or if he got it somewhere else, but he has taught me this. It's 60, 30, 10. 60% of a sale is the offer or the audience,
Mm-hmm.
30% is the offer, and 10% is the copy. When you really understand this, everything changes. Even me, like when I get told no, it's usually because it's somebody who's too small. They don't have a team already. I want to come in and do some big stuff. They're like, I don't know, I don't know. And they hem and haw and then they don't do anything. The bigger guys are just like, what do you want to do? Like, how much? When do you want to do it? Whatever. And I've struggled with that a lot. You see big opportunity, but one of the things that you run into is there's a lot of people, everyone has mindset challenges. Don't let anyone tell you that they got it figured out. I will tell you, I get this all the time. Like everybody has, everyone lives paycheck to paycheck until they don't. No matter how much money they make, there's a lot of people that still have that mentality, even though they make 50,000 a month, they're spending 55. It's no different than the guy working at the local pub who's barely breaking even.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like when you get into some of these bigger businesses, there's so much more opportunity because they've already proven the product market fit. They know how to talk to an audience. They have an email list, and you can go in and send even like tranching and going and saying, hey, let me find if they've got like 2 or 300,000 people, let me go find all the people that have opened 5 emails in the last 3 months. Let's say it's 50,000 people. Now you segment just to that. You can't do that in a small company, but this is where you understand your audience, and then all of a sudden, man, like, I mean, I've sent out campaigns and in 4 or 5 days made $30,000. Now that's not a huge amount of money. I'm not bragging here or whatever, but like when they were making 100, 200, $300 a day, and then you go in and make them 30,000 by just doing like basic proper campaign structure, which you can find in all these copywriter groups that have got even better ones than I got, right? But it's because like the audience is there, there's the demand for the product, they have the pain, you connect with them. And as a copywriter, who's better suited than finding out what that connection is than a copywriter who knows? I mean, a copywriter is skilled anyway. I mean, most business owners don't know how to do that. They get lucky. That's how they make money. They get lucky, honestly. But if you go in and help them, one person like that'll change your life. Because here's the thing that nobody talks about, and I wish more people talked about this. You only need one. You only need one anytime you're doing something new. The first time you do it successfully is like a light bulb goes off. I can do it again. Like, I mean, think back to like your ads. Like, I mean, I've loved watching you kind of get into the ad space over the last, year or so. And I look like, dude, I'll be honest with you, you'll appreciate this. I have so many of your posts saved as like, links in my, like, you can save Facebook posts.
Oh,
I've,
that's
I've done
nice.
it because like, I'm like, okay, yeah, he was a copywriter. He's more of a full stack guy now. He's got this ad thing figured out. And I'm like, this is like direct. I'm like, this is like goes in the swipe file because it's so good. And I'm like, and I judge that because I can read it on my phone and know if I was in that market, I would want to buy off of this, Facebook post. And I think you do it better than almost anybody, to be frank. Because it's like there's no puffery. It's like this is what we did. If this is you, this is what I did for another guy. If you want me to do it too, I've got one more spot this month. And I'm like, it's so basic, direct response. And I'm just like, God, he knows what he's doing. He is probably cleaning up with this shit. Like, this is freaking great. I
So
love it, man.
hold up there. The funny thing is, some of those posts work great, and some of them don't. And I always feel
Yeah,
like sometimes like the really basic stuff, like it's funny. I got some action on some stuff I posted about a month ago,
right.
and it was really basic stuff, but it brought some people in who were like experience. It brings more experienced people. I think people
Yeah,
who are selling to like in BizOp or selling to newer people, there has to be a lot of hype because that's what people want. And then people
right.
who've been around for a while, they get to a point where they're just like, well, they've seen all the hype and they know that there's very little substance to most of it. And they just want someone to, hey, will you just tell me what you got for sale? Um,
Yes.
tell me what you've got.
And those are the best clients, man, because you get a dozen of those, and man, you're making, six figures a year profit. And this is the thing I'll tell everybody. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've made a lot more money for other people than I ever have for myself. And I don't mind
Hmm.
admitting that. And it is what it is. But I will tell you, having, you know, having options, and like one of the things in finance that they talk a lot about with it when you get into like hedge fund guys and stuff like that is money buys options. This is a
Hmm.
mindset shift that will change everybody's life, and everyone's got a different number, and that's not the point. But when you have cash and you have the ability to generate cash whenever you need it, that is when you are free. There is no amount of money, and trust me, I've been flush and I've been broke as a joke, and I will tell you, the only reason I have any confidence is in the right situation, I know how to make money on that. I mean, I got a call, one of the toughest career, I'll tell you a story. And I mean, it's hard to remember this. It's one of the most painful things that ever happened to me. But right before our son was born, what, 8.5 years ago, 9 years ago, probably because it was before, I was doing a lot of brokering deals, and I did well with that, generating millions of business and blah blah blah, all that crap. But towards the end, I got really burned out because somebody stiffed me out of a pretty large sum of money. And at the time, like that was my main source of income. So to lose that, I didn't have a lot of reserves in terms of months of cash. And so we moved into this house and I was really short on cash because, this, 20 some grand didn't come and they were like, hey, we're not going to pay you. And I had a bad contract. I learned a million things out of that experience. But, like my wife is 7 months along, first kid, we moved into this house and I'm like, shit, what are we going to do? And, I consider this really divine, from a religious perspective. But I got a call on Monday from my very first coaching student who bought a $10 product off the Warrior Forum for me like 15 years ago now. And he said, hey, we're hitting a wall. We got this webinar coming up. I don't think it's going to be good. This is what we're trying to do. And I remember like I was like scrambling. I was like my confidence was shot. I felt cheated. I had all that negative crap that everybody deals with. But I was like, I know this is going to work. And so I'm walking around pushing a shopping cart for an hour in Publix, our local grocery store, and I'm mapping out how we need to redo the webinar. This is on a Monday. I did this on total rev share because I had like so few options at the time. And the webinar was Thursday, and in 5 days, it did like $116,000 at $800 a pop. It was a software plus coaching, like information type of offer. And they were going to do some bullshit monthly thing. It was really confusing. And I was like, that's not going to work. So we redid the slides. I didn't even write most of the emails, and I redid the offer. And I remember those text messages from him being like, dude, I can't believe how much money this is making. I think we did 50,000 live that Thursday, and then the rest of it was over the next 4 or 5 days till we closed.
Hmm.
And like that money was not only like that was you only need to do it one time. And that's when I knew I could do webinars forever. Because before that, I was brokering the deals and writing the copy for the affiliates, but that's all I was really doing up to that point. This is almost 10 years ago. And I did it once. And that money like got me through the birth of Warren because I didn't work much in March, as every new parent will know, like working with a newborn is tricky, especially if it's your first one. And that got me through, and I got 10% of that. So it made a decent sum of money, but like, I was pushing a shopping cart, redoing the offer on a phone with a guy in California. And why did I get that deal? Why did he come to me? Because he had paid me my first, small coaching amount. It was like 2010. I think it was like a couple $1,000. And I helped him get out of the military. He was working for Boeing and, he's a reservist and he was over in Kuwait, working in the war in Iraq and all that shit. And I helped him get the business established. And so I always tell people, like, you can have skills, you can have confidence, but like, there are going to be times when people like shit on you. And like, some of those times are the genesis of something new, whatever the next phase. So that was the end of my brokering career because I was like, I'm never going through this shit again. And then I got good at webinars and email and copy and more of a holistic, that was my going to a consultant. Like when you said you switched from being a copywriter to a consultant, that was my, going from a broker copywriter to a full stack guy. But, I tell people like when you take care of people and you make money, everything works, you know. And all these people out here who think, you're just going to make money by being behind a computer screen and, I want freedom and I don't give a shit about anything else. Like, you ain't going to last in this game, man. Like, you got to take care of people. And, that was a hard experience for me. But at the same time, I say that because I was already 7, 8 years in at that point. And I've had three times like that in my life where, I had a mentor the first time it happened. I had a mentor tell me you're 3 moves away from ruin or 3 moves from paradise. 3 events. It's like I don't care how much money you have, and like the bigger you get, the harder those things happen. So you could have one bad thing, couple clients, go out, and then you have a health issue, and now you can't work anymore for a while, and then your money's screwed. Or once you're in the hole, 3 good things can happen where you get 3 good clients who are willing to pay you well and all that, and then you can get back on track. So wherever
Hmm.
you are, you're only 3 moves away from ruin or paradise. And like that is something that, when you talk about emotional resilience and like this game is hard. And I think as copywriters and online marketers, the thing that nobody talks about is how we're all alone, without Zoom calls and all this. I mean, think about it. Like Zoom didn't exist, when I started. There was like meetups and things like that and forums and talking to somebody on the phone, being with people. We all need that personal time, even for introverts. Like you need some good human interaction, whether it's family or friends or colleagues or whatever. I think a lot of people really miss out on that, and that's what makes this game hard, because if you're working a job, like you have the people at the office and you can bitch about it all you want, but like there's value to having, that workplace interaction. I
Hmm.
think it's hard when you don't have that. um and I think that makes this game harder, but at the same time, when you take care of people, you'll have all those people there who are ready to pull for you if something happens, or you have a health issue and you need to come up with some money to pay for something that you didn't expect. I mean, we've all had times like that. I helped a gal out the other day who has been trying to get to do work for me, and it just hasn't worked out. And she lost her sister and was a little tight of cash. And she's like, "Hey, I'm going to give you a discount on this work so I can get the cash to buy my airplane ticket to go to the hospital to see her." And I just sent her money. I was like, just consider this an investment in you as a person because you've always been cool to me, and it just hasn't worked out work wise. I don't need what you do right now, but I know how hard it is if your sister is ill and might die. Money shouldn't be something that you worry about right now. Like, go see your sister, enjoy that experience. Hopefully, it works out positively. But if it doesn't, you'll at least know you were there when she was ill. And I think those moments come back around in the end, whether it's $50, $500, $10,000, doesn't really matter. It's just taking care of people, man, you know. And that's a competitive advantage that I will say I think is probably one of my biggest strengths is, you know, being with people, knowing how to interact with people and knowing, and that makes me a better copywriter and a business person too. So, anyways,
Hmm. Yeah, look, I mean, we've gone on some tangents here, Brad. I
yeah, we
had
got we got
I write questions and so people are talking, but I found writing questions. to keep up with you quite challenging.
I
Um,
know, I know. I get excited, man, because I like you so much. Like I really have enjoyed, talking with you over the bit. So like when we got to book this, I'm like, oh shit, we are gonna have a blast, This is my guy. Like
Thank you.
yeah, ask away, man. Yeah, yeah, ask away, dude. I wanna whoever watches this, I want them to be like, this is one of the better episodes. So
I want to
yeah.
just actually quiz you on a couple of things. One is just like making inroads with bigger businesses because this is something that it's a pain I've strongly felt.
Hmm.
And it's funny. I was chatting with Jeff Miller this week, and he's like, "It's not them, it's you." And he's like, he's like, when you're early on and you're learning your skills, then it's you. But later on, when your skills are a decent level of competence, then it's them. And then it
Yep.
becomes about who, like you said, back to the who, back to the like, and that
Who is
Travis Sago
everything?
30, 60, 30 thing, 10 thing you said, like that's stuck in my brain when I did one of Travis' probes. Like, that's valuable. And this is where I came
Yep.
up with the idea that like of the metaphor that copy is the tip of the spear, because the arrowhead is the offer and the shaft is
Right.
the audience. Like the most of the actual spear is other shit, but the copy is needed to pierce the armor of
Right.
the target.
Yep.
Anyway, that 60
100%
thing,
true.
that who thing comes into then on the opposite on your side with client selection because you're doing the same thing as a business person, entrepreneur, whatever the hell you want to call yourself. You're like looking for an audience, and that audience has to have the means and the willingness to spend money on your business. And then
Yep.
you find people who will have the willingness, but don't necessarily have the right amount of means. And you may work with them, and you may find that you get mediocre, meager results, and then you don't know why. And then it took me a while, and I realized, oh, it's actually them. It's not that they're bad people,
Yep.
but they are either comfortable at the spot they're at, and they don't really have inclination to grow. That's some of them. Some just don't have momentum. They don't want to do the work themselves. They just think they can pay, and other people will do it, and that doesn't work either.
Right.
They can't just give money to you. They have to give you energy as well. Because if they don't have
Hmm.
personal momentum, you actually can't move their business. Like, you can't.
Yeah. It's hard to multiply zero is what I always say. It's hard to multiply zero.
Yeah, yeah. If they don't have some personal momentum, you can't really add any fuel to their fire.
Right.
And and then there's like people who have both. They're the easiest to work with. Um, but just generally speaking, then I realized a lot of the time it's like it's them. So it's like they may have like a lot of big vision, they may have big goals, but if they're in a market that doesn't permit them to actually make money, then they're not going to go very far, even if they have the right work
Right.
ethic. So it's like you need to
Right.
find a client who's in a market where there's potential to make a lot of money, and then that client needs to have the work ethic that they are pushing for their goal, and then they need to
Right.
have money and resources to be willing to pay you, and then they have to whatever thing you want to do with them. In my case, with advertising, is like they have to have enough free cash flow that they can say, okay, I can actually start. I can commit to putting like 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 a month of my budget into ads for the next 6 months, and be
Right.
okay with that fact that there may be not an immediate return on that money. That there's a cycle between that money going out and it coming back in the form of new business.
100%. And it's something I'm still trying to get better at, man, because Brad with three clients and Brad with one client is a very different person.
Hmm.
Because I find that, like one of the things I learned when I went through my third financial tough spot was if you have one client, you have zero clients. If you have two clients, you have one client. If you have three clients, you have two. And if you have that
Yes.
mentality, it's because when you have one client it's really like none, because as soon as they want to let you go you're done. Like I
It's
had
it's
this
it's
happen
a
early.
job, and a job is
It
like
is a
you said,
job.
a job is having one client. And when you make that switch mentally, like when you get into this game, you think I need security, I need to have like a really good client, and it's like no, actually, you're better off with five crappy clients than one really good client sometimes, because at
Well,
least you got options.
you do, and I tell you, like that's a mindset shift, because like options, money gives you options. It doesn't give you security. Money is
Yes.
just money. Like Ron Lynch taught me this, and it's so powerful. Like when you realize that, because I spent most of my life, my adult life, thinking if I had a certain amount of money that I would be fine. I'd finally be happy. I'd finally feel okay. I'd finally feel confident in myself, and that and I'm not some guy who talks too much and gets too excited and is weird, and people think I'm funky. And it doesn't ever change, dude. Like you hit the first number for me, like back in '08, it was like once I hit $3,000 a month, I can pay all my bills and I'm good at that time. This is obviously a long time ago. Inflation has made that higher, and I was a single guy. Now my number is, 2 to 3 times that, for me to feel like comfortable, with, a wife and a kid and, inflation and where we live. But I'll tell you, like, when it comes to bigger people, I find a couple things help. And and I'll give you just the filters, because I think that's, if you filter down, to be very clear, in the United States, only 3% of businesses make more than a million a year in revenue. Okay. So you are going out, if you're going after seven figure businesses, which I roll, you're talking about a very small segment of people. It gets even tinier and you get to 10 million, right? Like we're talking like less than a percent. Okay. So when you're looking at people, are they spending money on paid ads? Don't sell advertising if they're not buying ads already, right? That's the first thing. Most people doing ads suck. Do they already have direct response copy? Yes. It's like the old thing, and I forget which copywriting book. The guy said, is it easier to sell a new briefcase to a guy with a new briefcase or a ratty briefcase? Most people think it's better to sell to the ratty briefcase guy, but it's not. It's better to sell to the guy who's buying new briefcases because he's already in the market for that, right?
Hmm.
So that's the first thing. That filter goes in any category, whether it's money, list size, whatever. Do they already have it? How long have they been in business? In the online space, 3 years is old in this game, right? If you look at all the two comma club bros and all that sort of stuff, and you look at them 2 years down the line, most of them are out of business because they have no margin. They're growing as big as can, and then they outgrow their own systems and mindset, and then they crater the business. Okay, so if they've been around for 3 years, that's something that helps me. I look at list size. How many people do they have to talk to, right? I personally, with what I do, being an email and campaign guys, if they don't have at least 10 to 15,000 people that are active, engaged, interested, I can't do much, to be frank. And I really like it to be higher at this point because, like once I've had like a big list, it's like, oh my God, I can do anything with this. It's like painting on a giant canvas. I can make anything. Um, Money. Money is a big thing. Like, do they have money? And you can find, this is it's hard to convey this all in a podcast, but like when you study people who actually have money versus people who look like they have money, for me, that's easy because I've done that my whole life coming from investor world. But like, you look at demos. So like I did a product once on this where I was showing people how to do market research. And one of the things I found was the media kits of magazines, right? So every magazine, Forbes, any of the big business, publications or fitness magazines or whatever, at the bottom when they have that whole like advertise with us button, usually on the bottom in the footer, they will have a media kit. Now, a media kit is basically here's all the ad types that you can buy. Here's our demos, their income, their this, their that, the other thing. Okay. Here's our competitors, right? So you're kind of like one leads to the next and a daisy chains. And then you start looking at that and you say, okay, well, if I want to advertise, if you're in the advertisement game, like I want to advertise to people who read the Wall Street Journal because the average person who reads the Wall Street Journal makes X amount of money per year according to their media kit, right? If that's your market. So finding those things in the online space is a little trickier. But then like, one of the cool resources, and I've not used this enough, and I think it'd be very useful for you too, is Facebook has their ad library thing now
Yes,
that you
I
can
use
like
it quite
type
a
in
lot.
any market and see all the ads in that space. Well, if the ad's been running a while, it's making money, right? If they have an ad that's running and making money for a while, probably a good chance they're not doing anything with their email. So, like in my case, I'm looking at that as a way to kind of filter people through. But it's all about finding like the bigger the business, the bigger the chance that someone's going after them. And the thing is, the bigger guys don't get hit up. You'd be surprised. Like, go see somebody screwing something up and shoot a Loom video. Hey, I noticed that this is a break in your website, and you send it to the chief technical officer. Okay, now you got that guy's information, and then I just ask him like, what's the big thing that's a pain in the ass in the business right now? And I use that phrase, pain in the ass, because
Hmm.
I don't want to work with people who are too corporatey and are going to get offended by that. That's a good way to filter out, they're not going to like me if they get offended at me saying pain in the ass, then we're not going to get along probably. But, finding those things on the to-do list. What's on your to-do list that you can't seem to get rid of? Be a problem solver. Like having that mindset of like I call it being a detective because I like true crime shows, but like be a detective, like that always helps me to find stuff. And the bigger you go, one of the things that I have found that has led to, when I look at relationships and I do like an autopsy on the relationships that work, one of the things that I find that is a good sign is when someone's vulnerable up front, because we all got spots. We all got stains on our shirt, chipped teeth, jacked up, ugly faces with freckles, stuff that we're self-conscious of. Anyone who thinks their shit don't stink, get out of here, man. You're going to be a pain in the ass. Like I've had pain in the ass clients, and I will tell you, one pain in the ass client can ruin your life in terms of, energy. It doesn't matter how much money you make. I've been paid very well and hated my life, and
Hmm.
and I will never go back. And I've had people that are, small, and I take them from a C level business to a B level business or a B to an A because they're good people, they're about it. It's about that energy thing. Like you mentioned, they don't have the energy or the momentum, or they're stuck in a mindset thing. I want to work with people who want to grow, and I want to know why they want to grow. Because if you just want to get rich and make money and buy Lambos and hoes and drinking at the club and all that kind of nonsense, we're not going to get along. No offense, that's not for me. I don't line with those values. I've never been a party guy, all that jazz. Nothing against it, just not for me. So I want to know, like, why is it? And you'll talk to people, and there's an exercise, and I forget which book this was in, but it's the five whys. It was like Toyota that invented it. You ask, like,
Hmm.
why do you want to make money? Oh, I want to take care of my family. Why? Because it makes me feel good as a husband. Why? And then all of a sudden you get three, four layers down deep, and you keep asking why until you're like, I just do. It's just the way I am. I got nothing else to add. And then that's the thing you go after. I want to know that. Like when you wanted to move to Spain, if you said to me, Brad, and you like, let's just role play it a little bit. If you're in Ireland, you're trying to figure out how do I get your wife has was it like a hair salon business or something like that
She
that
had a
she
beauty
had like
salon
a
business. Yeah.
beauty salon business. And let's say you came to me and you said, Brad, man, I'm racking my brain on how we can sell this salon business because it's local, it's only good for our market, and we want to move to Spain in the next year. What do I need to think about to get rid of this business without losing my ass? And let's say you came to me with that problem. First thing I want to know, why do you want to move to Spain? Oh, well, because like, I get really depressed in the winter because it's like no sunshine and da 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 da. Why do you get depressed? What else have you tried to get rid of that? Because I went through that in college, it was like in the dreary weather, I empathize with that. But I want to know that. And then it's like, okay, well, if this is what we want to get to, and these are the objectives and the constraints that we're dealing with, we can engineer a solution for the constraints as long as the why is important enough. And this is something when you're going after clients, I find um, when you understand why, the way becomes a lot clearer. There's that book, Who Not How, that's a big one from Dan Sullivan, and I can't remember the other fellow he wrote it with. Um, Who Not How is a big thing. Most people, when they got a problem, they ask, how do I solve this? The premise of that book is you ask who's already solved this problem? Who can I go talk to? And if you're talking about important shit like, hey, I'm having trouble in my marriage, or hey, I've got this health challenge that I'm trying to overcome, there are millions of people that have already solved that challenge before that will happily talk to you, most of them for free, just as a good human being. Right. And like, this is where, sometimes like I do so many free calls with people to help them out that don't involve me ever, like they say something to me where I'm like, I know they're not going to be a client. They don't have the money or they don't have the resources, but I can still help them because guess what? And this is something I want everybody to realize. Every person is a potential friend, referral partner, testimonial, mentor, um, any of those things. Every single human on this planet, all 8 billion of them, or customer, right? Obviously, customer two is the last one, right? But all of a sudden, when you think this way, everybody becomes an option. And so you never know, hey, I don't have a business, but like, this guy helped me. And like in my case, I told you the story about that webinar. I helped that
Hmm.
guy. He bought a $10 product from me and sent me like half a dozen emails that were pretty detailed. And then he ended up hiring me for coaching because he liked the answers I gave him. And then that ended up taking care of us for like 3 or 4 years. Like I worked with him in that context for like 3 or 4 years. and made good money, but it was my main source of income for 3 or 4 years. So, I helped him in a tough time, and I didn't even know till like 10 years later what was actually going on. And his daughter had some kind of medical issue that he had to get shipped back from Kuwait to America because they thought she was going to have brain surgery or some shit, And he didn't tell me that at the time, but he was like, this is why I wanted to become a free online guy because I was stuck in Kuwait and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go back and see my daughter if she died. I would stuck in the military, you know. And I was like, dude, why didn't you tell me? He's like, I was scared. Like, I didn't want you to think me as a charity case. And I was like, bro, come on. That gets me fired up. Now I want to help you even more. You know what I mean? Because I can't imagine that. And I wasn't even a dad at the time. Like, but now, like with my son, like Jesus Christ, like if something happened like that, man, I would hope people would help me, you know? Um, but that's how you find those people is like you never know where things are going to come from. Half of my leads are random, you know. If someone
Yes.
reaches out, I make a post and I mean I look at Facebook posts like I mind my Facebook likes all the time for conversations. If someone likes my post and I haven't talked to them before, hey man, saw you like my post, what you got going on? What cool projects you working on? And then I see if they're willing to talk. If they engage, then I feel like I can get on a call. Maybe it leads to something. I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. You know, one thing
Yep.
leads to another.
It's the same old simple stuff. I still am holding out for like somebody to have some magic secret, but there isn't one, which is just like
No.
talk to lots of basically be interested in people and talk to lots of them.
Yeah.
That's what it really
Go read
boils
Dale
down to.
Carnegie. Just do Dale Carnegie better than Dale Carnegie did, and you'll be all right.
It
And
is,
and
it
and
really boils down to that, isn't it? Be interested in people and talk to a lot of them. That's like beyond that, there's nothing else that really moves the needle better. Like, or at least for
yeah.
me, it hasn't. I find a lot of the same things as you is like you know never really know where the next thing's going to come from. Like the best new client who I've done a lot of business with this year, she came to me through a referral from somebody I sent a random referral to a year ago, and like literally like I don't know why I can't even remember who the referral was to, why I sent him that referral, just that it was just timing. He was there, and for one reason or another, I said, "Ah, it was something to do with somebody I knew." Again, a third party one. And it was like, do you know somebody who can do this particular bit of work? Oh yeah, this guy, Ryan. Okay, great. Chat to Ryan, make the referral. Don't hear back from him, never think anything more. But a year later, Brian says, hey John, I've got this client who needs help with some Facebook ads. Could you go talk to her? Yeah, of course I could. And then, you end up like that's been the best connection I've made all year in terms of new business. And you just do not know where it's going to lead 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years later.
I will tell you, man, like, this big client, the biggest client I ever had, the Brian Tracy deal,
Hmm.
I loved that client and it recently ended, very amicably earlier this year. The agency that runs that business, I was working for the agency. And, a guy that I was friends with for 10 years, and I've read so many of his letters as like a second set of eyes on a piece of copy. I do
Hmm.
this for a lot, like with other colleagues who I have a relationship with, I make it known that I have a standing offer. And I'm extending this to you now just because you might not have known this. But if you said, Brad, I've been stuck on this copy and it's just not quite hidden, what stands out as you things I could fix? Like a second opinion, like a doctor giving a second opinion, for a medical issue. I do that all the time and I love doing it because it actually makes me sharp when I'm looking at something I've never seen before. And it's like sharpening the knives, with a grinder stone for me. So I do a lot of free copy reviews with people that I know, um, because you never know when you need a set of eyes on something, and someone who's really good will just be like, "Yeah, dude, I'll shoot you a Loom video and walk through all the shit that stands out to me that you could fix." Um, I've done that with this guy for 10 years. Okay. One of my best friends. The day that I got that deal, okay, this is the day. This will show you how powerful friends and networking is. I had a meeting that morning with one of my other clients. And I said, "Hey, look, I'm looking. I want to grow with you. Like we've been here for a while. I'd like to. What can we do to increase my income? I'm not hitting my goals. I'd like to do it with you before I go reach out and give away some of my thing." And I was doing a lot of fractional stuff back then, so I had like one or two client availability at that time. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, I was told, friendly, it's easier for me to hire Filipinos to do some of this stuff than it is to pay you to do it. Your rates are too high, something to that effect. And it's fine. I understood where he was coming from. I would invite him to my wedding now, one of my best mentors. Okay. Love this guy who did this. And I was so deflated. It was a rainy day. It was just a gloomy ass day. I was in such a bad mood. My sister was in town. I was in just not in a good space. I reached out to this guy and I said, "Look, dude, this is what I can do. I'm looking for one more client. I want to make this amount of money, to get to my next level. Do you have anyone?" He's like, "Actually, I do." And like, what kind of stuff can you do? So I sent him basically like a text message, like mini resume, so to speak, of all the things I could do. He's like, "Well, this is the type of products it would be about." And be like, "Perfect." Um, and I got the Brian Tracy thing, and like, I didn't even go through an interview process, portfolio review, any of the normal crap that copywriters typically do. And by 11 o'clock that night, because they're in California, this place was on the West Coast. So I got a welcome to the team, all this other stuff. So from 7 in the morning, I was told I was too expensive by one person, all the way to now I've got one of the biggest clients of my career by 11 o'clock that night. And I was already asleep. When I woke up the next morning on a Saturday morning, I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. Oh my God, I can't wait to get started, man. And I was like, I felt like, dude, I can't even tell you, man. I felt like, a kid getting like six pixie sticks full of sugar. And I was so revved up that Saturday morning because I was like, oh,
Okay.
they're not doing this. They're not doing this. They're not doing this. And I'm like listing it out. My Christina's like, we're getting ready to eat breakfast. She's like, what are you so excited about? I'm like, I got this client. This is going to be crazy awesome. It's good money, great products, great reputation and brand awareness, giant audience. This is like a grand slam deal for me. I'm going to kill it. And we did. I sold tons of stuff. But like that's how this game works. In one day, I went from being told like, you know, there's no more opportunity here to now there is. And this is where, when people start talking with bigger people, that's how it works. Bigger people move like that because spending 5 grand a month or 10 grand a month for an established business is nothing, right? Like the US government spends millions and billions of dollars every day. Like there are people spending money and it's not linear either. A big business will drop $10,000 20 times in the same time that one guy will sit there and take 6 months to invest five. And they'll bend you over the barrel and make you give all this other stuff. The other guys are like, hey, dude, here's the money. Where do I send it? Give me your wire
Yeah.
instructions. And that's how it goes. So, like, that's something I pay attention to. It's not very like numeric or concrete, but the ease in which someone discusses doing business has always been a really good sign that they're going to be a good client for me or a good project or whatever. It's like they're easy to work with, they're ready to go. Um, they get it, they're about it, and that's something I find a lot of value in. But anyways, I'm answering your questions like 50 of them at a time. So sorry. I
No
get
worries,
excited.
man.
I talk a lot. I talk a lot when I get excited. This is fun for me. I've
I'm
been looking
I'm
forward to
gonna
this all
call
day.
time on this call now anyway, but we're gonna do another one in a couple of months. So
Cool,
we'll get
man.
to do another 90 minutes. What I want
Yeah,
to do
cool,
before
man.
we wrap up is just
Yeah, yeah.
let me know. You said you have 6 questions that you use when you go
Yeah.
into a business to conduct an audit. That sounds like a pretty damn good lead magnet for you. Um,
Yeah, I need
so
to put a squeeze page together. I need to put a squeeze page together for it. It's something I'm working on right now. Do
if
you believe
people,
I've never had my own website really for all these 16 years? I've never had my own main site for just myself. I've always had like with other businesses that I've been a part of.
I have
Yeah.
my website that's like months overdue to have some like to have a homepage redone. It's bad. It's
Yeah,
bad. It's
exactly.
bad. I know people are finding it and saying, "What the hell is going on with this guy?" It's like, and it's a failing, I think, on my part. Like you need to actually treat yourself like a client, which I have failed to do. And
Guilty. Guilty.
talking to somebody this week, an assistant, about potentially coming to work with me so I can start to do this a bit more effectively.
Nice.
But I'm not going to get into that conversation now. What I do want to ask you is where can people get a hold of those 6 questions to conduct a business audit?
Yeah. So for right now, just to keep it simple with people, I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I did, a slide deck PDF. If they just email me at workwithbradspencer@gmail.com,
Yep.
and I'll send you this in the thing. They'll get the questions. There's a recap slide that has them on there. I'll just send that out. That's what I've done in the past and it's worked. I need to get a lead magnet together, but it's, whatever. It'll take a while to get that done. So
I'm going to put
just
that in
send.
in the show notes an
Yeah,
upload.
just get yeah, just have him send me an email and I'll get it to him,
Okay,
Cool, man.
that's going to go into the show notes on YouTube now. Brad, thanks
Sweet,
very much
man.
for doing this tonight. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
I'm going to do it again. I'm going to stop the recording
I'll
right now.